Hi folks, we're back. This is Cutting Through the Matrix. And I'll also read a little bit from another site. It's actually the UK column. And it's from Tuesday the 23rd. And it says here, it's not a bailout of a country, it's the next phase of the bailouts of the banks. Ireland is not imploding, it's not in trouble as a sovereign nation as such. Ireland is being crushed under the weight of a collapsing city of London and Rothschild banking cartel, namely the Inter-Alpha Group. Now that isn't a conspiracy theory, that's a fact. You see, they set up this cartel, as I say, back in the early 70s. It's called the Inter-Alpha Group, and the Rothschilds are at the head of it. It's the 6 major banks of Europe, and they're managing all of this takedown and so on. They're the guys that push the bubbles for everybody to follow, and of course they're the ones who escape squeaky clean. Anyway, it says, we're witnessing a process of general collapse which began in 2007, a result of 40 years of gambling in the great global casino. That's where they put everybody's pensions and everything. The event of the last week are a continuation of that process, not a separate event. The bailout of Ireland is another stopgap measure which might get us through the next phase of collapse, but will have no effect in the long run. It's not meant to, because the whole world is to change into an even deeper, darker age under scientific socialism. Anyway, the system is coming down and its collapse is accelerating. Nothing's going to stop it unless we get a grip of the banks and put them in their place. By the way, as I say, that the man who's, I'll put the link up to his site, actually see him on YouTube, Jim Corr, who's a musician, and his family are musicians. And I'll put even a site up, a link to one of the sites of where they have a lot of their music there. But you'll hear him saying on one of the videos about this march, talking about it, and giving his point of view too of the bankers and how this was planned. And he's quite right. So most folk won't accept that because they watch television and then they watch all at Coronation Street afterwards, and you know that's more real to them than reality. Anyway, this article here, back to the UK column, says, remember what the Treaty of Westphalia said. That was the initial treaty, an old ancient treaty. It says, in this peace and amity, that this peace and amity be observed and cultivated with such a sincerity and zeal that each party shall endeavour to procure the benefit, honour and advantage of the other, and thus on all sides they may see this peace and friendship flourish by entertaining a good and faithful neighbourhood. Well, that's that's the nearest you can get to keeping your sovereignty and being good friends to other countries. Not the way that the EU has gone. This big, massive new Soviet. Anyway, it says, this is the fundamental principle of cooperation between sovereign nations, not the extreme socialist ideals of the City of London, embodied in the EU, the United Nations, Trilateral, CFR, or the Bilderbergers. It matters not where the extreme socialism comes in the form of National Socialism, Communism, or Communitarianism, which has gone Communitarianism in the present. The fix, it says it's easy, Glass-Steagall. This principle enacted in that piece of US legislation worked then to put the bankers in their place, and they can work today. Put the banks in administration, separate high street and investment banking operations, set a standard for debt, and any debt which does not meet the standard, write it off. Let the speculators go under. Actually, what they should do is do the system that Canada had in the first Great Depression, because Canada, you see, didn't have any debt. The government issued the money. It printed and issued it itself. Didn't get permission from some outsiders to do so or borrow. And at that time, they were debt-free. Everybody came from all the other countries to find out how it worked. That's why they destroyed it in Canada and made us the same as the rest of them. But that's how it should be in the first place. If you don't print your own money and back it with something as well, and the government's in charge of it, then it's once you put it into private hands, you're goners. You're owned by the lender. Always you're owned by the lender. That's the history of the world, all the way back to that book they call the Bible, the book of the law. So that's what's happening there. And believe you me, it's a message for all the rest of the countries they plan to take down like dominoes and get everybody under this so-called austerity, and the IMF will have the ultimate authority, and then it'll be signed into law by your own traitors in every country, that the IMF are now in charge of you. That's how it's going to be, folks. That's how it's going to be. Well, anyway, at least in Ireland, the gumption to stand up and start off at least with a peaceful protest and hopefully gain more members and get their voices heard. And that's the only way you can do something rather than sitting back and watching that darn television and getting managed into oblivion by the so-called experts who lull you back into a coma. Now, you understand Britain is a country itself that's been under socialism for an awful long time. And part of that deal was to bankrupt the people, bring on this phase as well, by massive spending and even massive immigration. There's so many stories out now about immigrants coming in from different countries. One from Romania is in court right now, who managed to get 138 or 140,000 euros off of Britain on welfare benefits, all kinds of benefits, because he was a poor gypsy fleeing for his life sort of thing. So many scams wide open. And of course they're using this kind of thing, the exception to the rule, to hammer the people who are already suffering that's meant for in the first place. And that's generally the elderly, the poor, and the